What's up, guys? It's D22 Soso, Wayne Chung of the Live of the Bike poker stream. This is the PokerCraft podcast. This is my VIP guest, Andy Bloch. Your fans are the Blockers. I'm just kidding. Okay, that was terrible. So, a lot of the new school people may not remember you. You're super OG. You were part of the MIT BlackJack team. My first memory of you was against Gus Hansen on the WPT. He was, I don't remember his position, but it was probably folded him, and he raised with 10 deuce of diamonds. And then you had ace 10 in the big blind, I believe, and then you defended. And then he flopped two pair, something like that. And I was like, oh my God, Gus Hansen's so lucky. Andy Bloch plays so good because he plays good hands. And then that was kind of my first lesson into position and aggression, in which if Gus Hansen has the winning hand, he gets paid off. But yeah, of course he got lucky, but I think like a month later after I saw the hand, I just like woke up one day, I'm like, oh, I don't know as much about poker as I think I do.
Yeah, I remember that hand pretty well. I think afterwards I thought like I probably should have just three-bet him there, pre-flop and taking it down there. Of course, it's easy to say. If it comes, two tens on the flop, then I double up, right? Like he has to catch a deuce. I still had more outs to beat him. I didn't go broke in that hand, so
you were the one there. So this is what I tell the audience all the time is like, obviously, one, hindsight's 2020. Two, we don't know what the different poker eras are like, or the viewers don't know. I've been through like, I don't know. I mean, you've been around longer than I have, but I'm about to hit the 20-year mark. And just like if you tell me like approximately which part of the year and what year, I could just like kind of recall how people played online and live. So that changes the context of like a lot of stuff. And we don't know if you had any history with Gus Hansen up until that time.
Yeah, I watched him play a lot. I watched him play. He had just won a couple months earlier, won the Bellagio 5 Diamond. So I had watched that final table. And, I knew he was pretty loose and aggressive. Even if you didn't know anything about him, it wouldn't take you very long at that final table to figure out. But he was playing a lot of hands. And he liked to gamble a lot, and there's no way that I was gonna like fold that hand pre-flop. I think though, it wasn't a strong enough hand that I really wanted to like. I should have like played after that, given especially that the other player wasn't playing that aggressively. It seemed like he was playing for second place. I didn't really need to. There's always a pay jump and stuff, and I probably should have just pushed back against him. Of course, if I did, he would have woken up with aces in that spot, and I would have been busted. So it's always easy after the fact to say, yeah, I should have three bet, or I should have bet more, should have bet less. There's a lot of things you can say after the fact. That's not one of the hands out of the hands I regret playing the way I did. That's probably not super high on my list, but definitely something I think I misplayed. I could have played it differently.
If you recall any televised hands, I'd love to talk about those too. But just like thinking back of the hand, I remember my naive self, because I'd only been playing poker for I guess like maybe 3 years tops. I'm tempted to say 2, and I had not had any no limit hold'em experience by the time I was watching those WPTs. So like looking back, actually the line you took is pretty much in line with like what kind of goes on nowadays, but there were eras probably around 2005 to maybe 2010 where three betting might have been one thing.
Yeah, I think I don't remember the exact stack sizes, but I think it wouldn't have been too bad to just three bet all in that spot, possibly. But maybe it was. I'm not sure. It was so long ago. Played so many hands since then and after that, and that was wasn't even my only like WPT final table in that like recent history there. So
you did some stuff.
I was very disappointed not to do better than my third place finish like back at Foxwoods. So that was a disappointment, and it was nice getting back to the final table and having that experience. And it was a much different final table.
Oh yeah.
Experience than the Foxwoods one.
Oh, okay. I just meant like the eras, like just no limit hold'em changes like so much.
Yeah.
But I was just talking. Yeah, go ahead.
when I first started playing, if people were raising 4x, 5x the big blind often pre-flop, very rare that anyone would raise less than 3x the big blind. And now everybody's doing like 2x min raises, slightly more. They
2.2,
just
yeah.
want to get cute for some reason. Um, I remember when it was about starting to change, and I sat down on a new table, the World Series main event, and people were raising like 4x, 5x, and then I came around to me and my turn to raise, and I raised like 2.5 or 3x, and everybody looked at me. What's going on? What's going on? And I remember the first people to 3-bet small too, and it was always kind of strange. Um, but yeah, it was a great way, especially if you're not used to it, getting people off their game. And people just don't know what to do. So you get 3-bet, and it's a small raise. Well, if you got a mediocre hand, you don't feel like you want to fold, but you're going to be out of position. You don't want to, or like a strong hand, but you don't want to open up the raising and have them show up with aces. So, like in the old days, if someone made a small 3-bet, it was like aces or kings.
Right.
In the old days, it's
I
like
remember.
somebody, limped. Well, certain people limped, and then
Back raised.
3-bet. It was like you should probably throw your queens away, if
Oh,
not kings.
queens for sure. I was about to
Yeah.
say maybe even kings too, depending on
But
who it is.
occasionally there would be maniacs that would wake up, or people that would like try to take advantage of that, those kind of situations, and they would. So you'd have to like just try to read the players, which I think used to be a lot easier.
Yeah.
Nowadays, everybody just takes so long, forever.
There's
That
a lot of factors. One, people try to hide stuff. Things are more studied. People are more confident. And then back then, a lot of the physical tells were less studied and more prominent. So
people also had a lot less experience playing poker, like not very fewer hands, and so they got themselves in situations that they weren't used to.
right,
Or like a lot of people playing the main event, they just weren't used to playing with that for that kind of those kind of stakes.
yeah,
And this is back in like the 20 years ago when $10,000 was a lot
a lot
more.
more. Yeah,
You had like one or two $10,000 buy tournaments a year. So
right.
somebody playing in the main event in 1997, they get 3-bet and they might just fold their jacks because they're afraid of a monster. And
To be fair, it might have been correct back then. Sometimes.
not against me, but
Not against you, not against Gus, but I wanted to put a
yeah.
cap on the hand that you had ace 10 and Gus. I remember there were at least two streets. It was probably three streets that bets went in, so you guys were relatively, whatever, deep for a tournament. And, you had showdown. I believe it was Jack 10 deuce or something like that. So the line you took was basically correct to induce a bluff from Gus Hansen.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, you might have been able to argue, especially between 2005 and 2010, 3-betting pre might have been the right way to think. But I think the era that you did it, and definitely the era today, shows the ever shifting adaptations of poker. Period. Is like the line you took was probably.
Yeah, the only thing is, like, it is a tournament. We're 3-handed, and anytime you enter a pot with Gus, all the chips are going to be at risk.
Right.
You have to be willing to put with second pair, or with a mediocre hand. At least at that time, you'd have to be willing to put a lot of your chips in the pot
Yeah.
without like a huge hand. And I think the way to reduce the risk and variance would have been the 3-bet pre-flop, possibly.
Sure.
But that's easy to say in hindsight, knowing
It's
what
very easy to say. Just in a vacuum, I definitely don't disagree with what you did. Of course, I'm not the one there. You're the one there. You're the one with regrets. So we're going by you. So let's get started with your, I guess, card playing career. You went to MIT as an undergrad.
Went to MIT undergrad. I also was there 5 years and got a master's degree in electrical engineering.
Oh yeah, you're a dumb guy.
And, yeah.
So, how did the MIT BlackJack team come about?
I was not the first person in the team. I didn't start it. It actually, the origins of the team probably go back to when Atlantic City started opening up for legal gambling, and people started going there to play blackjack. And they had some, at first, they had some favorable rules, and then the version of the team that I got into kind of like resurged, had like a resurgence um, in the mid to late 80s.
Oh
So while
wow,
I was right, what
that's crazy. Like I thought the first iteration was in the 80s.
yeah, no, well, what's an MIT blackjack team? I mean, people have different definitions of it. Was it a team of players from MIT? Was it people that said we're the MIT blackjack team? Um,
Fair.
was it somebody that formed a company and an LLC or whatever and had investors? So you probably want to like start with that, and that was a guy named JP and a couple other people, and he formed a team, a structure. They had outside investors, they trained people, and this was happening mostly while I was like an undergraduate. I didn't know too much about it. It was like a rumor, or people knew like there was such a thing.
It's Fight Club.
I was too young to play at that time
Wow.
most of the time I was an undergraduate.
What year was
Uh,
this?
87 to 91.
Okay.
So I turned 21 in 90. So I could have, in a sense, played then. We did hear a little bit about the MIT Blackjack team, I remember, in undergraduate. There was an article in like the school newspaper or like, the campus newspaper about a bag of cash that a janitor had found
It's
in a
awesome.
classroom. They had like 125,000 in it, something like that. And there was speculation as to why, how the cash got there, who left it. Was it drug money? And people were like, oh, it's probably the MIT blackjack team or something. And then
Dude.
later on in the 90s, mid 90s, 94, 93, 94 or something, that guy was still around, and I met him, and I ended up doing I had figured I had started playing. So I played poker like since I was a teenager, at least. Like I would play in high school for small stakes, or what seemed to me like bigger stakes sometimes. And then we played in college for like laundry money, like the change for the laundry machines and stuff, on a weekly basis. And then didn't really get too serious until after college, and I graduated, and Foxwoods opened up nearby in Connecticut, and I started going there mostly to play poker. I didn't really get into the blackjack and gambling stuff until I found a game. There was a game that a vice president of Foxwoods had invented called Hickok's Six Card Poker, and it looked kind of interesting. I got to like the pamphlet, and I went home, went on my. I think at the time I studied that game, I had just gotten fired from my first job out of college. Some disagreements with the boss.
What was the job for trivia
Was
purposes?
doing I was designing, well, the company designed like 3D stereo projection displays amongst other things. That was the main thing I was working on, and had some disagreements with the boss, and then he said like, get the F out of here. And I was like, does that mean I'm fired? And he like thought for a second. He was like, yeah.
I remember miscommunications like that. I did the same thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, good.
So, and then I got kind of bored, and had already been going to Foxwoods occasionally, and I just started going there more. And then I decided to like actually write some software to analyze the game. And I figured out like you had like a basic strategy, you'd have like a 2% edge against a casino.
Really? What were the
It was
rules?
so it was like a Caribbean stud or 3 card poker
Oh,
kind of
the
thing.
new game. The new game.
Okay, it
I
was new
thought you
game.
meant blackjack.
Not blackjack. So I
Yeah,
hadn't
yeah,
gotten
yeah.
into
Okay.
blackjack yet.
Yeah.
I got into this game, and I would go and I would go. I figured out the strategy, and I'd started to play a little bit on my own, but I didn't make a lot of money because it was a $50 max, and so I could play one person. I could make maybe $50 an hour or something if I can sometimes play two hands. So that's great for someone who just lost their job, but
Right.
I was also playing a lot of learning poker and doing better. And then I got a new job. I started playing in a home game in the Boston area that's still going on in another forum. Still, some of the same people get
Cool.
together and play after 25 years or so. So Bill is one of the people that,
Oh, shout out to Bill Turner.
yeah, he actually got me into that game. And the first week of that game, I went and I played, and everybody thought I was a big giant fish, and then I thought so too myself. So then I just decided, like, the next week I got to turn everything around and actually play a little bit tighter and a little bit smarter, and I did. And then I won a small tournament at Foxwoods, um, and that was like the first tournament that I won, and it might have been like one of the first few times I played Nolan Hold'em too in a tournament. Um, and um, there was a guy that just joined the game, and he was looking. Turned out to be JP, the guy that started the MIT BlackJack team, and I'm also looking for the MIT BlackJack team or somebody to help me, go attack this game.
Right.
Because I'm like, hey, we need, if I can train other people to do it and take a piece of what they're earning,
Yeah.
maybe we can figure out how to get the casino to raise the limits. I don't know, but I mean, at least do that. And so and he wanted to start a poker team. He wanted to start the MIT poker team, where we would train.
Ahead of its time. Ahead of its time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, no, it was about the right time. I mean, Foxwood had just opened up, but it was before there was online poker.
I just mean now that there are stables of, like, people,
Right. So he was people always were backing other people, but he wanted to go train MIT players, like brand new people that didn't necessarily even know how to play poker. But they're
That's probably a bad idea.
Students who were, in their
Smart,
20s.
though.
In their 20s, so they would have to be either like seniors or people who are taking their time to graduate, or grad students or alumni. Train them how to play low limit Texas Hold'em, low limit 7-card stud.
Wow.
and he approached me because, I don't know, he thought I was a good player from that home game, and I said, hey, yeah, we could do that, but hey, I got this other game. And I've kind of been looking for, like, the MIT team or, somebody to help attack this. And by then I had already done a whole nother level of analysis, and an advanced strategy that would give us about a 6% advantage. So
Nice.
I showed him, like, showed him my software and the strategy and stuff. And he and another guy named Semyon, who was part of the team, we decided to just form a little group, and we put up posters on campus and stuff. Hey, you want
to
summer
money?
job, go to the casino, play poker, etc. We taught them stud and hold'em and Hickok 6-card poker, and it turned out we won. I was pretty much the only regular poker player that won money, but everybody else. The poker part didn't really work very well, but the Hickok 6-card poker worked pretty well. We ended up earning, I think, about $30 an hour per person, so which is around our expectation, given that it was such a slow game, and they were only allowing us to play like one hand an hour. I mean, one hand per player, and we got like 15 hands in per hour or something. So not a huge amount of action. And then that lasted for way longer than I thought it would before they never kicked us out. Instead, they just changed the rules of the game and then eventually got rid of it. But when they changed the rules, it wasn't playable anymore. And then after that, like, I got recruited to the MIT BlackJack team. It was basically, hey, why don't we just reform the team, or why don't you join the team? The team was going on, but soon after I got back, I joined the team and I went on my first trip or two. They decided to split the team up into 2 teams. And if you've read
Bring Down the House,
yeah. There was talk about there being like the amphibians and the reptiles, and we were the amphibians, and we called the other team the reptiles, and they kind of adopted that name too, I think. And it wasn't like in the book where people didn't know that there were multiple teams. It was never really a secret. And I think the guy who was the main character in the book, he had started about the same time that I did, just before I think the team split. But he was on the other team, so he was a reptile. That book was about the reptiles. The movie itself was more of like the generic MIT blackjack team experience, if there could be such a thing. I mean, it's not a thing, but like a lot of us, there's no. Jeff did not use the money to go to Harvard medical school. Like,
So
not a
yeah.
doctor.
So basically, I haven't read the book in like a long time. I did watch the movie, and of course, I've had my blackjack stint as well. So this is kind of awesome that you get the book side, what actually happened, and the movie version, which is just like a lot of kind of fictitious slash pushing the fast forward plus fantastical things that just don't really happen.
Yeah, the movie, some aspects of the movie I thought was more realistic than the book, and vice versa. So, but I just thought like they should just do as accurate a true story as possible, and it will still be exciting. I thought like a lot of the funny, like the story about losing $100,000 in a classroom, that wasn't in the. I don't think that was in the book or the movie. I think it might have been in the second book. It was about Semyon.
I've read about it. I don't
Vegas,
recall. It's been too long. Yeah.
Yeah. So there was Ben Mesrick wrote two books about the MIT blackjack team, and of course the first one was turned into a movie. But yeah, we had like so many funny and interesting experiences on the team that like you didn't need to make stuff up or borrow stories from other teams. I think to have a good movie or a good book, but they did, and it was still successful, and the MGM made more from the movie than we did as a team over like the decades of our existence.
Different businesses. What are some of the stories that are stranger than fiction, more entertaining than fiction?
There was a story that one of the guys decided like he wanted to learn to fly to reduce expenses of going to Atlantic City, and they crashed on landing on the on one of the first trips in the plane. So that didn't end up saving them much money. we we got like chased out of a lot of different casinos. Somebody else once got back roomed, and like they sort of like empty the pockets, and like he just like took off his pants. Like kind of misunderstanding, like just dropped everything. Be like, look, I don't have a computer on me. I've been arrested 4 different times involving blackjack. Yeah, in 3 different countries and in India. So,
what are the grounds that they would arrest you though?
They would usually something to do with like cheating. Like they suspect you of cheating.
Yeah.
Using a device. Once was giving a false name to a police officer. Which
okay. Well, that's legit.
Trespassing.
Yeah, that's common. Yeah.
Well, you get kicked out, and you don't think you're really necessarily kicked out, and you go back to the casino.
Yeah.
6 months later, being invited to buy somebody that's eating to eat with them in the buffet, and then they arrest you on the way out. Like, it's kind of ridiculous. That's basically my trespassing at the Golden Nugget was a story.
The process is much more refined now. Like, it never stories like that didn't happen to me. Basically, they would just come behind me and just like ask me to leave, and then some places,
yeah, they would sometimes would do that. Sometimes it'd be very nice. They'd come up to you and say, "Hey, you're just too good for us."
Yeah.
And then sometimes, it would be do whatever they can to get you arrested. So we took a trip to the amphibians when we split up. We decided, hey, let's take a trip to Europe, play all around there, and then see. And maybe if it works out really well, we can just send a steady stream of people, right? So it was me, Semyon, and another player, a woman on the team, and we like flew to London, registered the casinos there. That was you had to actually register in advance, and then went all around Europe, and we got lots of way different um, reactions to our play in different places. So that was the first time I got arrested. We were in Monte Carlo. So, we stayed in Nice, took the train to Monte Carlo. No, we didn't. We had a rental car. We drove to Monte Carlo, and that comes
Nice,
to
Germany.
Yeah.
Nice,
No,
Germany.
Nice, France.
Oh, France. Okay.
Right, yeah. Yeah. So it's on the French Riviera. It's not far from. It's the biggest city that's close to Monaco, um, and so it's a short drive. Right. We stayed at little. I don't know. Someone was renting their house, and um, we drove to the casino, checked it out, drove back, drove again to go there and play, and we're doing pretty well, and we're winning. And then um, one of our players goes to the bathroom or something, and then it's just me and Semyon, and they're at the table, and they come up to us, and they're behind us, and I know they're about to kick us out, but I still want to like finish the shoe.
What was the plus true count?
But I don't know, like +5 true or something. I don't know, remember.
I mean,
but
for you to want to finish it, you must have been like drooling. You're like, no, no, no.
no, no. I mean, it doesn't really matter what it is. If it's slightly positive, I don't want to. I'm not gonna. And we used to simulate like crazy. And if you got kicked out, if you had to like stop a shoe in the middle near the end, and it was like a +5 true, you could lose
Right.
hundreds of thousands of dollars of
Right.
EP.
Yeah.
So, and that would cut down on what we would earn too, because
Yeah.
that would come as a penalty. So you might actually lose money by playing that shoe if you get to play all the way through. Lose money as like earnings.
Yeah.
So you definitely want to finish it.
Right.
You don't want to finish it if it means you're going to get kicked out for life necessarily, but I don't think there was a choice. Like as soon as we're done playing, we're done. Well, it was the casino people, and they wanted to see they wanted our passports, and they were going to arrest us. We could have tried to run out of there, but we had actually already saw that the third person, they had already picked her up. So we're like, we're not going to abandon her. We're just going to finish playing. And like, we think they already took her to the back room. So, if it was Vegas or something, especially if it was like an experienced player and everything, we might just run out of there and be like, okay, well, we're not really too worried. But even then, you don't want to abandon somebody in a casino.
Right.
They took us to the back room, and the three of us and we don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to make an example of us? Do they think they're cheating, or are we going to be held for a while? Are they just trying to scare us? Are they going to pay us? Are they going to So the three of us are in the back room, and this is 1994, maybe 93. So this is like the internet has started, right? They didn't have Zoom, but they were just starting to do video stuff on the internet, and they had us, which Semyon actually had worked on some of the research on that, and they had like the three of us are like, okay, get together. They had a camera on the other side of the room, and they're like, family portraits for the MIT team, and then you will hear them like they're on the phone, and they're like blah 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 blah, blah in French, I think. Griffin Investigations, Las Vegas, Nevada, blah 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 blah. But that's like the only words we understood, is that they were talking with Griffin Investigations, which was the main detective agency that specialized in card counters, and they had international clients, and they were just starting like a video networking thing where you could have live video or like send pictures over the internet. That was relatively easy to do and common at the time. But we don't know what's going to happen. Eventually, we asked to see our ambassador, which is kind of ridiculous because there's no ambassador in Monaco, but there is a consulate, and they just laughed at us. And then eventually somebody comes in, and they got like a gun on their belt, and they're like, "Here's your ambassador," and he's like, "The police inspector." They were just messing with us. They did go and I cashed me out and gave us cash. So I was like, okay, this is good.
Nice.
That's the first sign that things might not be so bad.
Okay. Right.
But you never know. Maybe once you get out of there, the police take it.
Right.
Maybe the police did it because they wanted it. And this is Monaco, so we're not thinking like it's third world country, but you just don't know. Like they don't want their casinos to be known as like a place where people can go and take advantage.
Yeah.
And they take us out. Eventually I get paid, they take us out, and it's like the casino, the walkway to the front is just lined with cops. Like they're police officers in like their uniforms. And we get out and then there's like 6 or 7 cop cars. and and there's like a prisoner transport, a little prisoner transport thing, but they took the woman in like a separate vehicle. Like we couldn't be in the same vehicle. And this is like the Grand Prix was going to be in a couple of days, so it was already set up, and we're driving along the Grand Prix track to the police station, and they get there. They interview each of us independently to try, like, I don't know, and search us. And they took me to go back to get the rental car, and this is where I really thought like we're gonna get screwed. Is he decided the cop there just decided like he had, like, I don't know why we couldn't just leave the rental car there or whatever, but they wanted to drive it back to the police station. But before he did, he went and like searched through like the trunk and everything, you know. And I'm like, this is a rental car. I hope like who was there last like had gone to Amsterdam and left something in the trunk or whatever. And at first I thought like, why is he searching the trunk? Is he going to plant something on us? Right. Well, he didn't find anything, and he didn't plant anything on us. So now, like, that's like the second key clue that we're going to be okay. Right. They really wanted to mess with us. They did that. And then eventually they interrogated all 3 of us, and they put us back. And we're in this little cell. It's like, I don't know, maybe like 6 feet by 6 feet or 8 feet by 8 feet, but it's like perfectly clean and everything. It's not really a cell in that, like, there's no bars, but there's a door that closes. And then they forgot about us for a couple of hours, and we had to like get their attention and be like, hey, we're still here, can we leave? And then they were like, what, you're still there? And then they gave us a police escort to the border, and we stopped at the first payphone because this was before or around like the beginning of cell phones, and we didn't have a cell phone. And we called the US and called, somebody that was going to be, I don't know, it was early morning, so it was probably still nighttime there, and told them the story, and, we won some money. And then, so that's how we were treated there. Like, we got arrested. They searched us. They searched through our, like, wallets and stuff. And I think Semyon had something in his wallet that had, like, everybody's names or something. Unfortunately, they didn't find that little card in there.
Okay. They didn't find it.
Because so we got kind of lucky with that, and they paid us. And we drove around. We played in Spain for like 3, 4, 5 days, and it was a very casual thing, but it was annoying because we had to get there really early because it would get too crowded for us. So we could get there really early, and then we could play for like maybe an hour, and then we'd be done for the day, basically. But that, they didn't kick us out for a while, and then we went to France, and then we went back to London. And London, we realized pretty quickly that most of the places you didn't want to leave the table, especially whoever had signed up as the member. As soon as you left the table, and if they suspected something, they would go up to you in private and tell you like you couldn't play anymore. So they were very, very ultra like polite there. So we realized that, hey, the next casino, we were like, okay, if you're the member there, you cannot leave the table. We're all going to stay at the table. As soon as we start betting big, because we know the clock is going to start ticking, we're going to stay there until they force them to come to the table to kick us out. And and then there are a few casinos that we didn't even like play a blackjack at. Like one that we just played poker, and by the time we got home, some of us had letters from them saying like our membership had been revoked and we were no longer allowed to play there.
Wow, crazy stories. Yeah, I mean, it's very similar journeys, and I tell my parents that like the MIT or the blackjack and the poker stuff started from MIT because they were very anti me doing the card stuff, and I'm like, one, I couldn't get a job. Actually, I got a job like drawing comics, which was $9.80 an hour. I'm like, play poker or draw comics, which I enjoyed. Like, it's a luxury to have those two choices, but I'm just like, I was
Right.
trying to communicate. I'm like, I didn't even come up with this. Like, MIT people did. So the year 1994 and 1995, that's about when the internet started getting commercialized. I was in Palo Alto at the time. So I do remember this era. Like, I think like Yahoo started coming out, and all the video files were MOV and AVI files. And MOV files were incredible. I mean, even to this day, are incredibly inefficient, but they were just like really large for like very short clips.
Yeah, and
Uh,
then online poker started in the late '90s, and all that took off, and the game changed completely. I remember in '97 thinking like, yeah, I have a good chance of winning the main event someday if I just keep playing. And that was back when there was like 200 people in the main event. So, and um, the first year I played, I was a chip leader at some point early on, and in the top few after the first day, um, and then I busted like short of the money. But that's another story.
Standard.
I remember that hand too, the hand I busted out the first time in the World Series. And
Recount
then
it.
yeah, so I had a decent sized stack, and I had been raising a lot, and it was floating around to me in the small blind. I had King nine, and I raised, and the big blind defended, and the flop was like nine high, and I bet, and I think he raised all in at that point, although he might have raised waited to the turn. And I think, oh no, the flop had nothing. The flop was low. Flop was low, and I bet again, and he called. And then the turn was a nine, and I bet, and then he raised himself. He raised, putting me all in. Um, and I agonized for a while, and then finally called, and he showed me ace nine. So he made like a
Uh,
loose call on the flop, and I guess I could have bet more on the flop to try to get him off the hand. And I probably should have folded the turn, given that I don't think he was the kind of player to like be playing, you know, be bluffing in that spot. And like he's not going to call the flop with anything worse than ace nine, any nine that's worse than ace nine. So I should have laid that hand
that's
down
fair.
there,
Yeah.
but I talked myself into calling and busted. So, um, and then it was late, but I was still able to catch the red eye back to law school. And I got to my room, and my answering machine picked up, and it was like a friend of mine saying, "Hey Andy, I know you probably won't get this, but congratulations, on making the money."
And you just missed.
And it was Andy Black that made the money. So he had called.
Oh.
He's like he had
That's funny.
called the Binions. It was still at Binions then, and he said, "Hey, is Andy Block still in?" And they said, "Yeah, he's still in. He's in the
It
final
was Andy
27."
Black. Yeah.
Yeah, and Andy Black was still in, but not Andy Block. Andy Block was back at, on campus.
That's funny. And for the audience that may not be familiar, like Boston to Foxwoods in Connecticut is not that short of a distance. Like to
Boston to Fox
travel.
is a couple of hours, a few hours.
Yeah,
Boston to
it's like
Vegas is like overnight red eye. Like
yeah. And these what year was this main event?
this main event was in '97,
Okay.
and that was the year Stu Unger won again. Um, and then the next year I played in. Was that Stu? Yeah, that was Stu Unger. And
Well,
then, yeah, a couple years later, Chris Ferguson won in 2000. I could not. I played again in '98, but I couldn't play in '99 because I wouldn't have been able to graduate. I would have missed my final exams.
do you have
Could
any
not.
Stu Unger stories? Because that's something that's going to be lost in time.
I did play with him a few times, and he was not at the top of his game. I played with him in the stud tournament at the World. It was either the World Series or the Hall of the or the Hall of Fame, which was like the second big tournament that Binions used to hold. And they had that in like December. And I don't know, I paired my door card, and he didn't want to give up, and we kept betting, and I
Yeah,
won the pot.
trips.
When I had trip fives or something, and
Yeah.
I don't, at the time, like he didn't show his hand. I don't think. Um, it wasn't very exciting. Now on the second time I was supposed to play the main event. Was it the first time? Well, whatever. The year after he won, I was playing the main event, and he was supposed to be on my table. There was like an empty seat, and people were like, "Well, who's that? Who's that?" And I said, "Oh, that's Stu's seat." And then he never made it out,
Wow.
unfortunately. So,
Rest in peace, Stu Unger.
yeah. And 2000, I think it was 2000 was when I first met Mike Sexton, who, another poker great that just passed away. And I met him at the dinner break, in the main event, and I had my friend Chris Ferguson. That was before he actually won the main. That was the year he won. He like invited me to dinner, and I had been playing at Mike Sexton's table, and I had won a big pot from him. I think I doubled up. I might have doubled up and like really crippled him. I don't remember exactly the action, but I had like ace jack, and he had pocket kings, I think. And I think I flopped a flush draw and then hit it. When we got all in on the flop, I think.
Easy.
And Mike stormed around and swore. And no, he didn't do any of that, obviously, because this is Mike Sexton. Like, he just was like, he didn't like it. He wasn't happy about it. But, and then, he was perfectly a gentleman at dinner, even though I had doubled up against him and crippled him in, what was obviously the biggest tournament of the year, and like almost the only big tournament of the year. So, and it's a huge loss for the poker community that he died so relatively young. Obviously, he outlived Stu Unger, who was a good friend. He was a good friend to Stu Unger and so many other people, and everybody, he really was like an ambassador to the game. And I don't know if there's anybody around now that can fill his shoes. I hope there's somebody that steps in, and maybe people start thinking about reflect on their own lives and their own careers, and maybe they realize that they can have a more of a long lasting effect if they use try to emulate Mike Sexton.
Yeah, I think starting from my generation, I'm from the boom. Like, I never even thought of being on broadcast, and definitely did not want to play on camera. So a lot of my generation were like at least 10 years in our career before we even considered it. Like Gary Adelstein and Andy have been in the mix at least 10 years, which is something that I communicate to the audience. Like, you want to be them, like with all the chips and earning it from poker, you might need to put in some years, and we look back at what you guys did on camera, and we're trying to take all the good stuff, and just like, if we can improve stuff, then yeah. So we're in the midst of our training, so to say, to do what we can in this era. And it's a different era, because back when you guys were on, a lot of you guys already knew each other,
Right.
like, and played with each other, interacted with each other, probably had dinner with each other. Like, starting from my generation, we can play locally, and we had a long online career. And the thing is, like, there isn't necessarily that shared history. So for example, like, Joe Ingram and Doug Polk, I've had friendly interactions with them, but we don't have any shared experiences aside from knowing each other on, like, YouTube, or playing together briefly.
Right.
So that's something that I think is better to develop, because obviously if people are playing ABC or have headphones on, iPad on, it's just not interesting for the viewer to watch. And commentating, it's like, okay, what are you supposed to say? You could like me, tell poker stories, but really it's just like, yeah, everybody needs to make a proactive effort to help continue the legacy of this game. And Mike Sexton, obviously, a big part of that with WPT, Party Poker, playing, and just the community in general.
Yeah, and he was there was poker on TV before Mike Sexton was around. He didn't invent poker on TV, but he did push it to the next level, and in a way to that nobody had really done before. And would poker be anything near the same? Would it have been exploded as much without him? I mean, there's a big question, because before there was a WPT, there was Mike Sexton pushing the Tournament of Champions, and that was a big thing when everybody in the poker world, well, not everybody, but a lot of people, they wanted to win a tournament so they could qualify for the Tournament of Champions. I mean, I don't know. I think I didn't qualify the first year. I think I don't remember.
Phil Locke was in there.
I was in law school or something, but it wasn't that easy to. It's not like nowadays there's tournaments every day somewhere. Well, not right now, but like
yeah.
There will be again in 6 months, hopefully, like tournaments every day somewhere that you can win to that would have qualified you for the Tournament of Champions. But there wasn't that back then, so people would go around and try and win tournaments, or there were like small tournaments that were like satellites that you could win to get into it. But it was like just a huge privilege and honor to go and play in that event. And I like the format too. It's some of my favorite games. It was the first rounds were Limit Hold'em, 7-card stud, and Omaha high low, all limit, and then the final table I think switched to no limit hold'em. I think 3 tables maybe they went to pot limit, or maybe day 2 or something, and then they went to no limit hold'em. And like nobody plays pot limit anymore. Pot limit hold'em anymore. Mike Sexton I think he liked playing a lot of pot limit hold'em, and that might be why he put it in there. And it was more of a common game, I think, in casinos than no limit. I think there was fear of cheating. Also, the bad players going broke too quickly in no limit hold'em, and that was a big thing. They knew the casinos don't want you going broke. Right? So that's one of the reasons like they had limit hold'em. They want you to they want to keep getting their $5 and every half hour from the players, or whatever it was back then. And but it was like those 5 games, I guess. And it was great. It was great format, great structure. And for years, some friends of mine, like we've like replicated that structure at a smaller like internet poker live in-person game event called Barge, which is a big August rec gambling excursion and that's been around for like since the '90s, late '90s.
Internet.
And people who would talk poker on the internet didn't necessarily play poker on the internet, because it started before there was internet poker.
Right.
But then would get together yearly in Las Vegas to play poker, and there was usually some blackjack tournaments and other games, but it was mostly centered around poker.
So the blackjack, during the blackjack team era, what were the rules?
There were lots of rules. We usually looked for the games that had, because the team play and the way we played, we wanted multiple decks. A single or double deck we usually didn't play, because you couldn't have we used a big player model where we'd have spotters walking around the casino, sometimes playing, sometimes not, counting, looking for high counts, and they signal the big player in.
Right.
If it's single or double deck, most casinos wouldn't let the big player jump in, and even if they did, there might not be enough time for the big player to get in and play a lot of hands. So we'd want a casino that had those games with high limits, good conditions, like not too crowded but not uncrowded, and with resplit aces, stand on soft 17, although that wasn't so important. If you had surrender, we want surrender, resplit aces, double ash or split. The basic rules that we look for, and a lot of the high-end casinos had these rules, especially in the higher limit tables. And it was a 0.25% roughly house advantage if you play perfect basic strategy. and um, that was basically our bread and butter. But we would go to other places that didn't have resplit aces maybe, or hit soft 17, or didn't have surrender, but we'd have to go and um, change not just the basic strategy and how we deviated, but also how much we bet. So we would figure that all into like exactly how much we bet based on our bankroll and based on the rules and other conditions.
How aggressive were you guys when it was plus EV? Because I mean,
Well, as aggressive as we thought we could get away with. So there are times like we would go from like a minimum bet of like $25 or $50 to maximum of $5,000 or $10,000 if we can get away with it. Usually you couldn't get away with that, and that was one of the reasons you did the big player, so that you'd have the small player betting 25, 50, or not betting at all. Big player would come in and jump in and get bet 1, 2,000, up to 5 or 10,000. I think the biggest bet I ever did was four hands of 6,000 because that happened to be the casino limit. So, and it ended up like multiple splits and double downs. And I think I had also gone down to like a $50 minimum at that same shoe.
I did the same things. It's I was also curious about like, you know, what did the true count have to be before you start piling on? Like if it's like, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, our units were depending on our bankroll, and it was usually we had very roughly like our unit was about uh, probably about $100 per $100,000. So 1/1000th of our bankroll was our unit. So, but we had like over $1 million bankroll at different points in time. So we have like $1,000 unit. So that means we would jump in usually at a true count of two, and then we would subtract one as an offset and bet. So we have basically $1,000 unit used on two hands. So you usually want to play two hands if there's anybody else at the table, and if the true count was like +5, +6, we might max out as like five or so, and
Oh yeah.
if the table max was 5K, if the table max was 10K, you can go up from there. Um, but it depends like how risk averse we want it to be. Like sometimes we use the higher unit.
Did you guys use count variations?
Yeah, we did do some variations. The first level when you checked out for the MIT team was like just basic counting and basic strategy, and the only variation you would do as by default was stand
16 against 10.
16 against the 10, unless
Yeah.
you couldn't surrender.
Yeah.
Um, because that one's so close anyway, and you're almost
Right.
never betting when it's negative. You're almost never at the table if you're a big player when it's negative. And but a lot of the variations. Oh, plus we would take insurance whenever the true count is +3 or more, and we just
Oh, it's
use regular
three.
high.
Okay.
We just use regular high low. Okay, we
Oh,
didn't
okay.
do any multi-level counting, and there's a variety of reasons for that. One is it wouldn't give you that much extra, given how we were doing the team play. You usually didn't get like 90% penetration. They wouldn't deal 90% through the deck. Usually, it was like maybe one deck left, 3/4 of the deck if you're lucky out of 6 decks. Um, so the extra advantage you got from that wasn't worth what the extra errors that you would make and the extra training that you would have to give to players to do for that. So, but insurance, it was an important thing because
It's
when it does come
free.
up,
Yeah.
if the count gets high enough.
Yeah. It's
Um,
huge.
but some of the bigger variations, if you did them, it often would get you kicked out. Splitting tens is the big one. Like casinos, any casino worker who is trained about card counters knows it. Like somebody that split tens is either an idiot or a card counter, and it's gonna be hard for you to come across as a complete idiot when the count is like +10 true or something, and you're splitting tens like crazy near the end of all the casino has to do is look at it and say, hey, you got a huge bet out and you're splitting tens and it's near the end of the shoe. Okay, you're probably a card counter, and you're probably someone that we really have to worry about. And that got me kicked out of more places by splitting tens, even if I was just practicing at low limits than any other thing that you could do. Now, if you know you're going to get kicked out, split tens. If you're about to get kicked out, this is your last round. But I wouldn't recommend splitting tens unless you know nobody's paying attention to you or you're going to get kicked out anyway. Because that's going to get you kicked out. So after that, there's only a few other, there's other variations that are worth it. But in the beginning, you don't want to focus on it because it might make you make more mistakes. Because every successful variation, deviation, whatever you want to call it, if you do it wrong, it can cost you way more. So it's much more important just to focus on your act and on not making any mistakes and not getting too tired and getting the money out there than it is to eke out every little 0.1% that you can. But if you're playing alone and you're playing single or double deck, then variations become much more important.
Yeah, I don't know what book I recall this from, but I remember reading the insurance count was +4. So I mean, I never did the math myself, but Live at the Bike, I'm basically hosted by me. I'm gonna come out with some undocumented things about blackjack, at least for 2020 book form and video form. One of the things does have to do with insurance and being more accurate about it. The other was like single deck and double deck. I'm in San Diego. I was in San Diego. Everyone could put two and two together. Like there was a very good single deck game that doesn't exist anymore, and there was a double deck game that we used teams to. Me and a bunch of buddies had different roles, and we were just at the single table, and it was $100 minimum, and then we did a lot of the count variations, and we had separate jobs for counting. Like ace count used high opt 1. And how would you compare playing professional blackjack and playing professional poker?
There's a lot of similarities. There's a lot more differences, and good blackjack players might not end up being good poker players, and vice versa. Like as we saw with the MIT team, we tried to train some people to play low limit hold'em, and it's way harder to teach somebody that and get them in a couple of months and get them ready to play for you over the summer than it is to teach them how to play blackjack. Very easy. You can test somebody's skill at blackjack much easier. Nowadays, there's online poker and that stuff, and I think it's a little bit easier because you can have them play online. You can test them out from there, and you can have them play a lot lower limits in poker, or you can have them play tournaments and sit and goes, and it's a little less of a social game, but in blackjack there is a basic strategy. There's an optimal play at every point, especially if you're not worried about getting kicked out of the casino. You know when you're supposed to do what and what the cost is for not doing it, right? In poker, you don't know because you don't know your opponent's strategy.
Right.
You know that in blackjack, and you can practice and you can get pretty good at blackjack. But you have to hide it more than you in poker. Poker, like hiding it or being somebody that people want to play with, that's important for your long run earnings, or hiding how good you play or how you play. But in blackjack, you have to hide the fact that you were knew how to win. Right? Everybody knows. Everybody that sits down at the poker table thinks that. Well, not everybody. Some people don't think that they can win. They just like to play and have fun, and they're out there because they want to get lucky or beat some players or whatever. But pretty much everybody thinks that they can or will win eventually. In blackjack, like the casino, most people go play blackjack. They might hope they get lucky, but they're not. They're not even playing basic strategy. They might think they are, but they're not. So, and I could ask somebody like one thing, one question, and to know, and they would almost always people that claim they knew perfect basic strategy, and they would get it wrong every time.
Here, try me. Throw me under the bus.
Yeah, like ace seven, soft 18 against a 10.
That's a hit.
Okay, so you pass.
Yeah.
But everybody else, we pretty much
Sure.
will just stand. They got what 18. I'm going to stand with 18, and if that is one that if somebody says they know how to play basic, and I know like they just don't even know what basic means. You ask them that, they're going to get it wrong every time.
Also, multiple different decks have different basic strategies too.
Yes, and that can be a problem. And different rules too. So there's funny stories like occasionally, like we would play in a casino that had other versions of blackjack in them, like Spanish 21, I
21,
think.
Spanish 21, yeah.
And if you don't realize it, and you're counting a Spanish 21 table, it's going to go up pretty high, pretty fast. And so you got to pay attention to what the rules are because they can vary at different tables.
I remember a couple of the count variations that help throw things off. 12 against 4. If it's negative, you're supposed to hit.
Yep. Yeah, there's a lot. Like some of the soft doubling ones can be good. There's actually a point where you could double for less. So normally you would never want to double for less. Like it's either you double for the full amount or you don't double, right? But there's actually a point when if you are if you're taking account like the size of your bankroll, you might not want to double and increase the variance. But if you're going to double and there's no chance that you would ever want to take a second hit anyway, then like 17 against a 2, I think that was one of the ones that you could like double for less, because if the count is high enough and you want to double, you wouldn't want to like hit again if you got a 5 and you got a 12. So you only want to take one card anyway, no matter what, and you're always going to want to hit. So you might as well throw a little bit more money out there, and you can actually, given your exact bankroll, you can figure out the exact amount that you'd want to risk.
It's hardcore.
Bet.
Yeah.
But like, it's also good like cover because the casinos are like, they're gonna call it like doubling for less. Like, who in their right mind would double for less? Well, the only time it really makes sense is if your bankroll is limited, and you want to figure out what the exact right Kelly amount to have bet on there is. And
Kelly criterion, yeah.
Sure.
One of the other ones was like 9 against 2. I believe the threshold is like +1.
Yeah.
Hard 8 against 6. I don't remember the threshold. It's been a long time. Was it like 3?
Yeah, it's pretty low. Yeah, I have not played blackjack.
You forget. Yeah, you definitely forget.
I might even mess up basic strategies if it came down to that. I mean, yeah, I would definitely feel like I need to review everything just to make sure. So like the only time I kind of like play or blackjack much is the Blackjack Hall of Fame. Comes up once a year, and I had to miss this past year because I was on a family vacation.
Is it invite only?
It's invite only. If you don't know Max Rubin, like you're not gonna, or somebody that knows him well. And
1 sec, Max Rubin. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Now you know him. You might have played at his casino. Well, it's not his casino, but he like consults for the Verona Casino. In San Diego. So you might have. They used to have a really. I don't know if they still do.
Then he might know who I am.
So you might not. Well, one of the things is if you do go to this, you have to basically promise. He doesn't make people sign anything, but if you want to get invited back, you can't go and play blackjack at the Verona Casino. But he might.
That already happened. So go ahead.
So, but yeah. So, they have every year. There's a competition, and at the blackjack ball, and the first part of that is like 21 questions, true, false, multiple choice, and fill in the blank.
And so you don't play; they just like test you.
So that there's and half the questions or more don't even have anything to do with blackjack necessarily, or some of them don't even have much to do with gambling, but it's usually all gambling related.
Okay.
I mean, it might be like who lost the Super Bowl last year or something like that, but not usually that. But there's usually something about like uh, you know, blackjack conditions in Las Vegas or other places, and there are some blackjack strategy questions in there, um, like which rule is more favorable or what's the correct play here, given that the dealer exposed, this whole card, and oh,
Wow.
there's only yeah, and some of them are easy, and some usually they're really pretty hard, and you're lucky to get half of them right. But that's like the most blackjack. And so I usually like do like a few minute review of practice counting a little bit because if you do make it to the second round, it involves some actual playing
Like,
scenarios, like some advanced play, some blackjack techniques, and I haven't won it yet. I've been in the final table a couple of times. But
so this is like the Putnam exam for blackjack.
yeah, sort of. And then there's like a trophy, a cup, I guess, that he puts etches people's name on it.
I want a trophy. I'm gonna beg my way into participating next time. I don't know if it like me being barred from Brone is a good thing or bad thing, but
Um, it won't be. I don't think it will be bad because you didn't know him then. It would be bad if you went back. But,
that's no way. The game doesn't. I mean, the single deck game doesn't exist anymore. That's what I alluded to. Basically, the game
but
was you could not resplit aces. There was surrender, and I believe hit soft 17. So the house edge was 0.02 to start.
yeah, yeah, it was like the best rules you could have without actually having an edge. Like I have played in games where you had an edge, but those are very rare.
Actually,
Um,
with count variations, you did have an edge hand one.
yes, yes, but they had him consulting for them, and they're very sharp, and they would. I'm sure people have been able to play for a while and make money there, but
I
I think
lasted 8 days.
yeah, I think overall they probably have done really well by having such favorable rules, at least up until they decided to not have them anymore. I don't know
Yeah,
when
I've
they.
known of people getting skinned in that game. So whatever minuscule amount I did was nothing compared to what I've seen that game go down. So yeah, it's a business decision. So yeah, like that's the live of the bike video. I'm gonna come out for blackjack. I do have a lot of stuff that you mentioned as well, that except in a little more detail since we're not allowed back anyways. might as well make that YouTube money.
Yeah,
So your experiences from online poker in the late '90s, that was like Paradise Poker was like the the main site.
yeah, I didn't play that much online. In fact, I don't really play much until like Full Tilt and such got started. But yeah, it was all the P's: Planet Poker, uh,
Paradise, Party
Paradise
Poker,
Poker,
Poker
Party
Stars.
Poker, and then Poker Stars is the first one that was not like PT,
Mm,
but they seem to all want the
P.
alliteration there. Um, and yeah, I remember thinking like nobody's ever gonna catch Paradise or whatever. I mean, whoever the top poker online poker room was, we thought like, oh, there's no way another site's going to beat them. And then there was always another site that did come along and beat it.
That's
Except we
yeah.
still have Poker Stars now, and that's that may or may not change soon. I haven't really been paying attention to online poker outside of Nevada because um, I don't really feel like getting a VPN and playing or risking it. I was able to play a bunch of the World Series of Poker events that they had this year, and I probably played more World Series events this year than I did the previous couple of years because I was able to
Right.
play them from home. We could log in with like just before the end of the rebuy period, and then still put my kids to bed even while I'm playing. So that had a big advantage for me to be able to play.
So did you basically tail off your poker play? When did you start tailing off?
Well, right around Black Friday, 2011, when the DOJ indicted and shut down the big online sites, and I still played I didn't play very much at the World Series that year. I think I played like 4 or 5 events. Um, and then I didn't I haven't, other than the World Series, I haven't really been playing much at all since then. For a couple of years, I did play a bunch at the World Series. I did win a bracelet in like 2013, I think.
What game?
7 card stud.
Is that your go-to?
I have a pretty good record in stud tournaments. Uh, I there are not that many of them, and I've won a more than my fair share for sure. I've gotten lucky. Um, I think stud is a great tournament game, but unfortunately, not enough people agree with me. So there's not too many of them, and like they didn't have stud tournaments on the World Series of Poker.com, so I couldn't even play that this year. It's very that was one of the annoying things, is that their software is not really up to kind of caliber that PokerStars is, and the games they offer aren't up there. And I, that's one of the reasons I don't play a lot online poker, because I'd have to go and play. I basically would have to play No Limit Hold'em, maybe a little bit of PLO. I mean, they do have some stud games sometimes, but no, not that much.
Did you play a stud online?
Hmm?
Did you play stud online?
Yeah, I used to play stud. I used to play like horse games,
PokerStars and Full Tilt.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Then we must have butt heads there somewhere.
Probably. I would play everything from like play money up to like 2,000, 4,000. So.
What was I say? I lost my train of thought. The Yeah. So then after Black Friday, did you just like stop poker, or you just play live, or just like kind of left it behind?
Yeah, I played some live tournaments, but I pretty much didn't like play a lot of cash games. And then, a few years ago, 7 years ago, I got married, and a year later we had our first kid.
Different
and
life, yeah.
Now it's a lot harder to get out.
That's transition when you get older, that kind of happened to me as well. Whereas like, when you're younger, you're forcing every fraction to EV. Then when you get older, you're like, oh, real life. So you value stability and being able to get up in the morning.
Yeah, and like the years my wife was pregnant, or just my first daughter was born just before the World Series, so I could play a little bit,
but you have to, responsibility.
Newborn. My second daughter was born towards the end of June, so I couldn't really. I didn't want to go and play any live event.
Yeah.
The only live events I played until like the week after she was born, like we had people helping us, and I felt like I could play the main event. But before that, I played a couple of tag team events, so I wouldn't have to actually be at the final table if we made it.
Oh, that's funny.
So, I was able to go in, tagged in, play enough. I played on day 1, played on day 2, or whatever, and then, and I played. There was a couple online tournaments, I think, that year, so I was able to play a little bit. But yeah, it's hard. I didn't want to end up going deep. Even I didn't even want to play like 3 or 4 weeks earlier, because if she goes into labor early,
sure, yeah,
you
need to be there.
You need to be there, and you end up missing, even if it's only like a couple % chance. It's still not a risk that I necessarily take.
Like 2.2%, that does happen quite often if you play enough hands. So I had something before. Oh, do you have any? So the software, like, from the software producer's point of view, it's like Hold'em, No Limit Hold'em is the most popular game, and like honing the software for that is easier to spread out. Like, Limit Hold'em or PLO, the software variations are similar, whereas if you commit resources and time to 7-card stud, it's very difficult to.
Yeah, it is if you don't have good programmers working for you. I think if you want to design the software to be kind of flexible, because you don't know, like in 3 years time, like, maybe a new version of poker is going to take off. And yeah, No Limit Hold'em is still number 1 for sure, But if you didn't have Pot Limit Omaha, I think as a site you'd be behind. And I think the sites that offer all the games, or almost all the games, have an edge at attracting the higher limit players. And I think that also attracts a lot of low limit players, even if they don't play those games. So, and it shouldn't be that hard to figure out how to make your software play stud. You still all the cards are the same. The hands rankings are the same.
I don't think it's hard. It's more like the customer support if something goes wrong.
Yeah, it can be.
And like the accusation, like it's just the more complex it is for the player to see variables, it exponentially makes it more difficult
But they have, for example, they have Omaha. They don't have Omaha, and they have stud, but they don't have it on the phone app. They only have
okay.
on the phone app. Like they can't figure out how to play to show 4 cards instead of just 2 cards, or do pot limit or whatever on the phone app. And
might be UIX thing. I don't know.
There's huge problems with their phone app. Like if you turn your phone like this, it blanks the screen.
Oh man!
And it says, "Please rotate the phone." Like who? What kind of programmer? Like it's an app. It's not even. It's one thing if it was a browser-based app that it's hard to control the rotations. The last few years I've actually been going back and doing some engineering programming stuff, and so I have some experience in what it would take to prevent a browser-based app from rotating. But even then, you shouldn't blank the screen. You should have the screen small and rotate it. You shouldn't. There's no reason, especially after all these years, that WSOP.com has been out there, that you can't play this way. This is the natural way that people are going about, want to hold their phone.
Right.
And you can't play this way, and it blacks it out. Like if you're lying down or something playing, and you tilt the phone or whatever, and then you can't see it. And it's just so I don't know. I had at one point I was when the sites first started, I was keeping a list of like all the little things or big things that were wrong. It was like 20 or 30 things wrong, and almost all of them are still wrong with the software. And then every time I play, I notice something else that just infuriates me. And a good site, PokerStars or whatever, Full Tilt, way back in when they were around, they would never have they probably would have done that in the beginning, but they would never have let it last more than a few weeks.
Full Tilt software was pretty good. I was on Hollywood Poker. I don't remember what skin it was for. I need to look at it one of these days since I mentioned it so much. Like those 2 softwares are pretty good. PokerStars like still tilts me. Like sometimes I think I click and it's like not clicking.
Yeah, it would probably tilt me too. But if that tilts you, the WSOP.com will drive you insane.
I don't even touch online anymore, and just like I get messages and texts of just like, oh, this site like did this. I'm just like, well, I'm too old for this. Like I'm not leaving.
If you want to play the World Series, that was like pretty much your only choice from California to drive to Vegas, and you could have played, but you would have been infuriated, but you still would have played if you really wanted to. And there's a bunch of people that came into town and spent like a month here just to play the World Series.
So you have engineering/math background for undergrad and I guess master's from MIT, and then you went on to develop law. Did you mention you were in law school in the 90s, and then what happened recently?
I went to Harvard Law School. So Harvard. I was thinking like, do I want to be a poker player, blackjack player for the rest of my life? I don't want to do something else. And I thought like, well, maybe I'll go to law school. I took the LSAT and I scored really high, and then I still wasn't sure.
Just brag. How high?
I just I don't know, 117. I think that was 220. 120 was the highest, so I didn't.
Oh, the scores keep changing.
Yeah, it was like out of 120. I think at the time I took it, and I think I got like 4 questions wrong. So, but and I so I was like, okay, I'm only going to apply to like the top 3 schools, Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, and Stanford rejected me outright. Harvard,
what year was this?
96.
96. Okay.
So
I'm trying to get the context of the era, because like in 1996, like
that was before like poker and everything was big. So
yeah, I know, but tech was just what they were valuing at that juncture is like who accepts people to what school, like that it fluctuates.
Yeah. So I know. Those are actually Harvard is the easiest of the top few law schools to get into because they have such a big class. Um, Maybe not the easiest, but it was easier for me. Like Yale is one of the hardest because it's such a small class, and they waitlisted me, but then rejected me, and Harvard waitlisted me, then accepted me, and then I still didn't know if I should go. But then a friend of mine who
You
had
should go.
has gone to like a not top tier law school, he was like, of course,
You
jealous.
have
And
to.
like, are you crazy? You have to go to law school if you got it at Harvard.
Well, at least
So
it's a nice friend. I see some really dirty things going on with those kind of conversations. But yeah, I mean, just like it's crazy because like obviously there's a wave in what it's 2020 now about like whether college or grad school is worth it, and if you get in these top brand names, like even if I'm not a school person, but like if you have the time and resources, you should just like force yourself to finish it, just because the branding does last a lifetime. Like in this podcast, you mentioned your MIT undergrad, Harvard Law School. This is like automatically when people hear about that, they put you on a certain pedigree, and everybody else that tried to go to that path but didn't get there always has a chip on their shoulder.
yeah, and some people like downplay it, or some people think like, oh, it doesn't matter, it doesn't
It
mean you
definitely
suck or
matters.
whatever. Some people, I mean, it is something that I always have, I guess. And it's definitely helped me in the past of like getting projects or
Yeah,
getting support.
exactly. It's not so much like it doesn't. There is some correlation to your competency, but it's just the social interactions are just like so massive when you're able to mention achievements like that. Like even mine, just being StarCraft world champion, or just like being interviewed twice for the UCL MFA program, which is harder to get into that program than Harvard Med School by numbers. But just like even saying these things, it just like automatically puts you in a place that, okay, this guy isn't dumb. Let's see what else he has, and so on. It's probably the case for you for a lot of these things, whether it's poker, blackjack, MIT, or Harvard Law. But then, did you recently go back to law school, or?
No, I recently we went back and took the patent bar exam. I mean, I had to go and like do a few weeks of studying, and then I took it. I guess I took it just in time in February because it would be hard to actually take it now. I'm sure the testing center was closed for a while, and from what I hear, I think everybody that's trying to take tests like that you have to do in person,
Hmm.
there's a long, wait list or backlog. It's hard to get slots.
And
Um,
you passed, right?
and I passed.
Good.
So the second
Congratulations.
time I tried to take it, the first time I crashed in their computer like multiple times, and and then I still probably could have stuck around and taken it and done it a little bit differently, but then I decided just to come back the next week and take it fresh. And I crashed the computer on like the first question.
They knew it was you, man. They knew it was you.
So I didn't crash the second time, but I was also more careful, I think, about what I was doing and how I was searching. Uh, uh, so
So
I
where's
passed. I haven't actually started practicing as a patent attorney yet, and I'm not sure if I will, but I think I probably will start taking on a few smaller clients anyway, and write some patents.
that's the question I was going to get into. Like, what's ahead in your career?
Yeah, so I've been working on some software and programming web stuff. I also have a patent that of my own that involves like vibrating particles and levitating them in a fluid and mixing.
Oh yeah,
And
I do that all the time.
been working on stuff. At first, I was applying that to making ice cream. That was like one of the first things, and so using that technology or some other things to. I don't want to say too much more about that, but if anyone
Okay.
wants to get into like the ice cream business, they should go. Ice cream technology business. Yeah. I have some really good ideas about that.
Well, my audience is very polarized, especially when they see me and a certain person like you. Then
Or
people.
if they have like some gambling patents or related, or any kind of patent stuff, I'm gonna pretty soon probably start taking on some patent clients and helping them at least like get the initial patent filing out there.
I gotta do a sick brag since you went to law school. Yay.
Nice. Oh, nice. Where's that from? What's that for?
Uh, it's a it's a casino game, but it's a little complicated, and I don't want to. I throw myself on the bus, but I don't want to publicize stuff just yet.
Oh,
timing is a lot. um,
yep. Well,
yeah,
you know what? I know your name. I can search for it and find it in about 5 seconds.
sure.
I won't do it right.
It's on my LinkedIn too. You could, yeah. I mean, if people really want to search for what I'm doing, it's out there. I'm just, not relevant enough that people even give a crap. So, yeah, that's cool. And like, timing is a lot of stuff. Like when there's so many like just misses or coincidences, like with timing, with like, so many events that when it like, or even big pots. I don't know if there were any big pots that were very crucial to swing your career when it came to poker or blackjack.
I think especially in poker, winning or getting to the final tables at a couple of WPT events in the first season. I mean, that was pretty crucial. Um, Being able to play in the first 50, just even be able to play in the first 50K event at the World Series, and then making the final table and finishing second against Chip Reese. I mean, that was
Rest in peace, him
that
too.
that was another sad loss for the poker world. Someone who died way too soon. He, did that. I could win like lots more bracelets, and it probably won't matter as much to me, anyway, as being able to play against Chip heads up in that event, and play with Doyle Brunson and Phil Ivey and like just so many other like great players out on the table. I mean, it was a great experience just being at that table.
Who are like the top like three challenging players, or players you've had the worst time against, the biggest challenges?
I don't know. I mean, I guess Gus. I had a couple. I don't think he'd be much of a challenge. I mean, he is always challenging, but Ivy sometimes he like and then a lot of the new players are obviously great players, and they're gonna especially the ones that have transitioned to playing live from online, and they've got a ton of experience.
Yeah.
Got a ton of they know how to play perfectly or nearly perfect if they want to, and they also
Right.
know how to adjust if you're playing too tight or too loose, or you're not gonna. They don't think they're gonna make a crazy bluff on the river, and they're gonna be able to read the situation, if not
Sure.
the person.
Absolutely. And it's poker and black. I mean, you have a pretty full-fledged career. And do you have any comments on COVID?
I have a lot of comments on COVID.
All right, let's do it.
So I've been tracking a lot. Like, I'm another one of the people that has been tracking it, and I have my personal web development website. I've put up some charts and graphs and maps.
Okay, we'll have a link at the bottom. So
it's labvegas.com. So like Las Vegas, but Lab Vegas. LABVEGAS.com. And now I have like some of my work stuff there, but I changed it so that there's only like two things there that when you go to that page, and one is a map of Clark County, that's Southern Nevada, and the other is a bunch of charts, and you can go and you can select all sorts of different kind of charts. And in the beginning, I was doing more like projection based on the SIR model of disease transmission, and trying to predict what the curve might look like after the first peak. But for a variety of reasons, I took off the projection part, and now there's just a lot of different ways to look at all the different variables at the same time. A lot of the charts you look at, you have to like scroll to or go to a different page to look at them, and all of the different indicators, they all relate to each other, right? Like the number of cases and the hospitalizations and the deaths, and seeing how they relate to each other and how they're changing in time. And I also, we've been looking a lot at the how the facilities have been handling it, the mostly the skilled nursing facilities, the nursing homes. And I think that even though there's been some focus on it, there's been not enough focus still on them, especially we should have, especially after like the first nursing home in Seattle or around near Seattle that had that big initial outbreak. We should have realized and focused on that way more. And we've had that second wave in Nevada and throughout like the south and west, and we shouldn't have had that. We should have realized much sooner when we reopened that we were reopening too much too fast, and should have made the mask mandate and shut down the bars earlier, and we would have had our kids back in school then, and we would have saved dozens of lives. And to me, as somebody who looks at data a lot, and I took some courses at MIT and probably statistics and stuff, and I'm always analyzing things, and I might not analyze it in a way like the people who are like scientists criticize me, like my brother and other people like criticize some of my charts and stuff a lot. But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking like, how can I present this, at least to myself, in a way that I would like be willing to make some bets. I wouldn't want to bet on this, but like, the information and at what point and how should we be changing our response to this pandemic. And yeah, it's pretty clear to me that we missed a lot of opportunities where we could have. We had the warning. We knew what was going to happen. It was obvious to me in June 10th, if not a few days earlier, that we're having a big spike. And it took 4 weeks for the governor to shut down the bars, and like 2 to 3 weeks before he had like a mask mandate. And then he didn't go and like stop people from partying on July 4th. And we had this, and we ended up with days where it's just crazy to me. Like after the first initial spike, that we allowed this to happen, and it was completely throughout the country. It was completely, a lot of it was completely avoidable.
So it's hard to move the needle when it comes to operations. It's. Do you have any advice for like the individuals if they're listening to this? Precautions.
You should pay attention to how the rates are in your community, whether they're going up or going down, and if they're going up, then maybe you don't want to plan things in the future. If you can do something now, do it now. If the rates are high and they're going down, delay things. Right now in Nevada, everything is dropping. Hopefully it continues by 50% every 3 weeks. So you can think, hey, can I delay this 3 weeks? That cuts the risk in half. Like if I'm going to go and bring my car in for service and have to sit and wait around, maybe I can delay it for a few weeks and a couple months, and the risk will be much lower then. My battery's running a little bit low, so I have to either plug in or hang out. So
okay. Well, thank you for your time. Do you have any last words to add to the podcast with people out there?
No, the people often ask me like what my what my advice to poker players are, and that's don't go broke.
Yeah, it's everybody roars really loud until that's about to, and also like your network too, like your friends or people around you, they go broke. It should be a big warning sign, so
yeah.
All right, thank you for your time, Andy Bloch. I'm gonna make it a thing. Your fans are the blockers. Take it easy, guys.
Okay, thanks a lot.